Welcome to the podcast where motherhood meets reinvention. I'm your host, Sharon Macey, and this is Mom to More. I'll be speaking with remarkable moms who have embraced the art of transformation, crafting their more by leveraging the skills they hone as stay-at-home moms. They'll share their experiences, struggles, and successes as they return to a former career, pursued a passion or hobby, or charted an entirely new path, giving you the clarity, motivation, and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Welcome back to Mom to More. I am so pumped you're listening in because today's guest will get your entrepreneurial ideas flowing. Deb Perkins is the founder and CEO of Board of Directors. I love that name. The company that helps early stage entrepreneurs build companies the right way and prepare for a round of funding. A 3-time entrepreneur, 2-time intrapreneur, consultant and digital educator with 20 plus years of experience as a founder, co-founder, board member, advisor, or founding team member, Ms. Perkins has worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs in almost every industry. She graduated from Vanderbilt University and attended the marketing management segment of Columbia University's executive MBA program. She currently resides in Austin, Texas. For those who don't know, and I was one of those people, intrapreneurs are individuals who are tasked with creating new and innovative products within an already established business. So with that, I say, Deb, welcome. And I am so glad you're here. And I'm really excited that you're joining me today.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you. So I like to start the interview off with I call it my essential mom question. And that is, how many kids do you have and where did you raise them?
Well, I will say that I raised 3 children, triplets in Connecticut, where we first met many years ago. Those children are now 28, but unfortunately, 3 years ago, my son Clark died in a surfing accident. So I now have 2 amazing children, Lucia and Sam.
And I know them. We've known you for many, many years, and we go back. So mom to mom, my heart to your heart, because words fail, at a moment like that. He was an extraordinary young man.
He really was. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't stop hurting, even though it's been 3 years, unfortunately. I'm an optimistic person. I keep thinking, okay, this is going to be a better year. And it is, it's better, but
maybe by inches of magnitude, right?
It's better. Yeah. It's better. Yeah. But the nice thing is I'm so grateful to have had a quarter century with that kid. He was the most amazing human. And it was such a joy to be a parent to triplets and see them together. So yeah, it's pretty much the highlight of my entire life.
Yeah, and they're really great kids. And when you just said triplets, I remembered years ago you said something really funny to me, that you were so big carrying triplets that your belly would appear, if you were sort of walking around a block, walking around a corner, that your belly would appear seconds before you would. So.
Well, I mean, if you can imagine, I could almost straighten my arms all the way out in front of me, a slight bend in my elbow, and I'm pretty small petite, normally. Yeah. So that's pretty big.
How many years did you stay home with the kids?
So I had a really big job prior to having children. And I didn't have them until I was married for, I think, 7 years. And so it was pretty obvious with triplets that I was going to take some time off. And I ended up not really going back to a full-time job, maybe ever, but finding things along the way. When the kids were first born, it was a crazy all hands on deck situation, even with a really great amount of help. But I also knew after a little while, like when they went to nursery school and then on to school, that I needed to do something else. I wasn't, I just needed something else in my life. So I started doing a lot of fundraising for different charities in our area. And that became like surprisingly a very time consuming business for me. I was
Absolutely.
starting,
Yeah.
I was starting different concepts for different charities, bringing them ideas on how to raise money, and then executing those events. So I would say that was probably like a 20 to 30 hour a week job at times, but I still was able to manage my time and do lots of other things with the kids.
Which is so important. So why was it important for you? I mean, obviously you went from 0 to 3. I mean, I went from 0 to 1 and I was totally overwhelmed. So I cannot imagine going from 0 to 3 overnight. So, but why was it, we had talked before about why it was important for you to be home with the kids. So let's talk
Um,
about that for a moment. Because I know there's a lot of moms
well,
out there who either have to or they have that luxury, right? It really is a luxury to be able to stay home with your kids. So talk
yeah.
about why that was important for you to be there.
I mean, first of all, I had one of my children had open heart surgery at birth, so that needed attention and watching and all those things. Number two, it took me a long time to have children. We went through 2 years of infertility, and I kind of felt like, listen, if I was going to go through all of that, I really want to enjoy these kids. And it was really just so much fun to see them interacting with each other. I loved every minute of it. It was amazing. So, it just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I think it was. I think during those times you develop really strong bonds with the kids, when they're that young and you're doing so much for them and then you had that times 3. So I can
Yeah.
appreciate
And
up to your eyeballs in diapers, right?
right. And let's face it, I had the luxury of doing that. A lot of
Yeah,
people don't.
I realize that.
But I was lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think we all are, those of us who have that option. It is a gift, to be able to spend that time home with the kids. So let's talk about how you started creating your more. And you came from a family of entrepreneurs, but you started in the corporate world. So when did you sort of get that entrepreneurial itch? And what was your very first venture?
Well, I would say that I was really lucky to be given responsibility in a Fortune 50 company to build 2 new lines of business. Um, and it was during it, I actually went from IBM to 9X. 9X at the time had just left the Bell system. The Bell system was broken up. And they really didn't have many marketing people there. And I had that background. So I was given the opportunity to build a national training company, which I did by purchasing various local groups of trainers and um, using those trainers across our country, across the US in 80 different locations where we had IBM business centers. So
So
that was like
big
my
job.
first thing. Yeah. And what was cool about that is that, of course, it wasn't on my dime, right? And so anything I did felt really fun and new and different. And I had the ability to do things on my own, but there weren't really many consequences, right? So I would say that was my first. And then I also worked on a product, an integrated voice and data product. I like to call it the first iPhone. And
Say it again, the first what?
the first iPhone,
Oh, the
where
first iPhone. Okay.
yeah, I'm joking, but it was that type of thing where you would be talking to people and you could also have data that would talk about that would record the phone call and give you information.
Mhm.
Anyway, so those two things led into a real love of building businesses and all the things that go along with that, building a team, everything from the packaging to the marketing plan, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then my first venture outside of that was my ex-husband and I bought a pasta company. And that was kind of cool too. We changed the branding. We went to a fancy food show and really changed the trajectory of a company that already existed.
Interesting. Can you say the name of the brand?
Yes, Down East Pasta.
Nice, nice. And
Yeah,
those food shows, crazy because there's
crazy.
so much food and you must be like a ping pong ball going from place to place in those, at
Yeah.
those fairs.
I mean, those are real make and break things in food. So we had something that now is no big deal, but at the time we had pasta extrusion, like devices that could make shaped pasta. And we were doing lobster. We had our factory was in Maine. We were making lobster shapes, and we were doing mascots for teams and moose for LL Bean and things like that. So it was fun. Yeah.
That's really
But,
interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a moose shaped pasta before, a piece of pasta.
yeah, it's not really novel anymore, but back in the day it was.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I also remember that you did something, tell me how many years ago it was, called Cat Perkins, the shoes.
Yes. So when my kids were 14, we lived in Madrid and for about a year and a half. And during the time I was there, we were doing a lot of taking advantage of being in a different part of the world, and we were going away on weekends. And I made a new friend who was a friend of a friend, Catherine Levine. And we realized that we're both short. We both like heels. We both had like injuries from sports, and we were trying to jam our shoes, our high-heeled shoes and wedges, into our suitcase. And so when we came back to the United States, we started a company called Cat Perkins, which allowed the wearer of the shoe to change the upper to all kinds of different styles.
That's right. I remember that now, because I remember looking at the shoes. They were a little too high for me to wear at the time because I'm taller than you. But
yeah,
now that you say that, I remember that was so unique and such an innovation that you could have many different pairs of shoes with one base.
Yeah. I mean, they were really cool. They were really great. They also had a comfort element, which we didn't really want to publicize, but they were really the only shoes I could wear that were comfortable and high. So anyway, it was a great experience.
That I remember those, and that was a great story.
Yeah.
So let's start to sort of, dive a little deeper into your story of reinvention. Clearly, you have a broad array of skills and knowledge. But I want to go talk about, for the time that you were home with the kids, including when you were living in Spain, as a mom, you developed so many skills that you don't even realize that you're developing. You kind of don't realize that you already are an event planner and negotiator and communicator and a chef. So let's talk about what mom skills that you honed as a stay-at-home mom, and how did you deploy those in your journey of reinvention?
I mean, I remember thinking that my job prior to having kids was like the hardest job. I was on a plane 3 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. But what I soon realized is that my job as a mother was 100 times harder. Negotiating between the kids, figuring out how to staff, I don't mean like we had a huge staff, but how to find people that were good for my kids, how to get 3 kids into nursery school at the same time, which was a challenge.
That is a real challenge, yeah.
Yeah. How to plan trips, how to figure out how to get kids that are, babies and young children places, and everything was a logistical kind of exercise for me.
And those are all, everything that you just said: negotiator, staffing, admissions, right?
Yeah.
Planning trips and logistics. It's hard enough when you start with one, and then we ultimately, as you know, have had 3, and just getting 3 different kids to 3 different places that at roughly the same time, because everything starts at the same time. You realize that is a skill, that those are all skills that moms can take and go on to their next act, something else.
Yeah. And I think even managing people in a way, most children who are not twins or triplets are going through different classes with different teachers at different times. They have different learning styles, right? But when you have kids in the same grade with the same teacher and the same test, and then there's differences in test scores, just trying to manage people's peace of mind, managing, disappointments, and explaining to kids what different strengths they have and what they have to work on. Those are kind of, I don't want to say HR skills, but skills you use as a manager in business, right? When you're trying to manage your staff. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also a little therapist thrown in there.
100%.
Yeah.
A lot of therapy and a lot of, managing what soon you learn, okay, don't say what you really want to say. You got to say the opposite. No.
Can't do that with
complicated.
grown-ups. Can't do that with grown-ups either. Right?
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you really learned a lot from having the three kids all together all at once, especially the art, right, of how to speak to someone, how to get them to see it your way, how to get them motivated. And those are all skills that you absolutely take into the office or your
lots
venture.
of persuasion, at every
the fine
level.
art of persuasion. Yes,
definitely.
And those are absolutely very strong mom skills that are they're human skills. But I think as moms, you really hone and develop those skills even more, and you don't even realize you're doing it.
100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, I came from a sales and marketing background where listening is really important. So, I mean, I just remember thinking to myself, okay, I have to almost like I'm on a IBM sales call, right? Where I have to ask the customer how they feel about something, what the problem is. There's certain things I feel that are useful throughout your life. And I noticed my daughter and all my kids really have always questioned, am I taking the right job? What if it's the wrong job? And I always feel like everything we do contributes somewhere in our future, and nothing's really a waste that way.
Yeah, that's a really strong point. Very strong point, and a very wise point. Because life is sort of like it's steps and steps as you move on, and you take the information that you learn early in life and you change it around a little, and you see how it fits into as you get older. So that is a really great observation. I appreciate that.
I'm sure you find the same thing.
Oh yes.
Right.
Many times over. And what's interesting is even as they get older, there's still issues, there's still questions, there's still, am I taking the right job? And I think it really never ends. And I think as moms, as women, we just get better at understanding where they're coming from and how to answer it. And the answer is similar, but it's very different whether they're 9 or 29. So I think you're right. It's a lifelong skill that we hone and that we carry with us. Okay, so you started Broad of Directors. Love the name. Absolutely love the name.
Thank you.
Talk a little about Broad of Directors and what that does. And then I've got some more questions to you after that.
So, I mean, what I do is I help founders of startups find funding. And, I have to say, after Clark died, it took me a while to really figure out what was going to make me get off the couch and be excited and, be productive again. And I found that multiple episodes and shows of The Real Housewives wasn't doing it. So
no,
I know. At first it worked.
Interesting.
But, eventually that wore off. And I found that I really enjoyed helping, early and mid-stage entrepreneurs figure things out. And I was doing some consulting, in person in New York City, where I lived at the time. And once COVID happened and my life changed, I ended up moving to Austin, Texas to be near my other 2 children. And I was like, you know what? I really need to make this a virtual business. I need to take it from a one-on-one and make it applicable to many. which I'm still doing. I mean, it's a work in progress. But the impetus was that the conversations I was having with these entrepreneurs tended to revolve around the same types of things: how to prove your concept. A lot of people were having manufacturing or product development issues. How to fund, we call bootstrapping, early funding for startups, where the entrepreneur is paying on a credit card or just keeping costs as low as they can. And I had learned a lot with some of the things that I've done in the past, some of my startups. And so I was just getting a lot of joy out of helping them figure out how to do those things. And that's when Broad of Directors was born.
That's great. And are you the only one, or do you have other people that you work with?
I do work with other people, but I'm the primary owner. I have some people on my team.
Gotcha. And so you have a new business, you have a new entity, and let's talk about some of the struggles that you experienced with Broad of Directors, and how did you deal with them?
I mean, the biggest struggle is really just finding your customer, right? Especially my target customer doesn't have a lot of money, right? So I was lucky enough to have some very high paying consulting customers, and still do, but the vast majority of people that I work with, obviously they don't have money. That's their primary struggle. And so I decided to offer some low cost products that entrepreneurs could learn on their own, on their own time. They could have a benefit from a combination of live Q&A with me, along with a course that is running at its own pace, or running at their pace, I should say. So that was one of the models. I just started a membership for entrepreneurs, which is a really low cost option. And it gives you a lot of like premium resources, contracts, things that would cost a lot of money to, buy. And so that's kind of my lowest cost option. And then I still offer one-on-one consulting with at different levels for different things.
Okay. And is there a particular type of startup that seek your expertise? Are you focusing only on women? Is it a mix?
Yeah, I did think that women would be my primary customer. And, of course, if you know anything about funding in the startup world, a really abysmal percentage of women and underrepresented minorities get funded. Less than, well, I'm going to say 2%, but that's even generous.
That's incredibly low.
It's incredibly low. So my vision was to help that group of people, but I was surprised to find that many of my courses were attended by men, and a lot of my consulting clients were men. So, we all have the same problems as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Is there something that you can do to try? I mean, I guess it's more of a global question. It's not really a Broad of Directors question. It's like, how do we get more women in the entrepreneurial world? How do we get more women to say, hey, I have an idea, and I'd like to move forward with it? We have an audience of, moms who are listening to this, and I'm sure that there are some wonderful ideas floating around. How does someone start with sort of a germ of an idea and move forward with that?
I think the greatest thing that people can do to take a risk, but not a huge risk, is to really test their ideas. What used to happen in the world is companies used to develop a product, make sure it was like the greatest product it could be, spend a ton of money doing that, and then sell it, right? But what changed really in the auto industry in the mid 2013 to 15 is that people started to realize, instead of spending all this money up front, let's do a little bit more test, come up with a minimum viable product, an MVP, test it again. And that's really the secret for anybody who doesn't have a lot of resources. Be really creative. And I teach this, and I have lots of free resources on my website on how to do that. But that's how women or anyone can kind of see, okay, I think this is an idea. Oftentimes we're the customer that we're targeting, right? So that we need something, we develop it, and we really need to see, do other people want this? Will they pay this? Can I build a customer that, can I build a loyalty that will be strong enough to overcome any competition? Those are the things that you want to do. And also just build a really strong company from the beginning. Find advisors. That's also like my number one thing. Talk to people that have done it before. It's such a time saver. Keeps you from wasting so much time on money on things that don't work. And women particularly have to work harder to have that same network that men often have in place. And that is just putting yourself out there over and over again, really.
So getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Just, if you have something you believe in, just really pursue it, right?
Yeah, test it.
Don't take no for an answer. Yeah.
If it passed the test, move on. If it doesn't, pivot a little and try again.
Right. And one of the things you said about the products that you offer and the people that you consult with, you are also a teacher, right? You've been a teacher since the day the kids were born. And that is a skill, even though we don't have degrees, our master's in education, that is a skill that you take throughout life. You're really a forever teacher. So that you're continuing to do that right now. So Deb, for your own companies that you've developed, how have you creatively found funding?
So let's look at Cat Perkins for a second. Okay. In the early stages, my partner Catherine and I bootstrapped it all the way. We had some savings. We were really careful with anything we purchased. We used the free version of the software. We were really careful. But we also made some mistakes. We purchased some things that were dumb in hindsight. But we also did some things out of necessity. So one of the problems with creating shoes, especially shoes that are, patented and complicated to make and have a long lead time, is that you're spending a lot of money developing those shoes before you ever see a dime of revenue from a customer. So one of the things that we did that really brought in money, but also tested our concept, back to what I was saying earlier, is we held a series of customer events. We had a focus group where we paid a focus group person to really look into, were we the only two people that would like this idea, or would that appeal to a lot more women? We had a great feedback. Then we did a what I'll call like a pre-launch party, where I only had the sample shoes that were in my size. I was the foot model, and I put one shoe. Somebody lent us their incredibly beautiful townhouse in Manhattan. We had a big party, and we invited everybody we knew, and we only had one size shoe, size 7, left foot only, and we almost sold out of our entire line of shoes. So that was an incredible thing for us both to see, like, which shoes sold the best, but also to have money to pay the factory ahead of time. And so we did a lot of clever things like that, just out of necessity.
Right.
And we also took a deep dive into crowdfunding, and we raised friends and family money as well, which is, a real experience. And not easy to go to friends and family and ask them if they want to invest in your company.
I also realized what you just said, where you had this in New York City and you invited everyone you knew. That goes to the power of your personal connections that you cultivate, and their friends and their acquaintances. But those are people that you cultivate over years and years. So the fact that they were there for you speaks very highly of you and what they think of you, and believe in in entrepreneurial ventures that you are creating.
Yeah, I mean, I was so humbled that so many people came to this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that so many people bought a very novel shoe idea. And I mean, it was so great to see, and it was so wonderful to feel that kind of support. I mean,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we really we tried to also sell it on social, and so we invited like anybody who would walk through the door.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
it
I
felt
think you
great.
have to do that at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing in this interview and also the various interviews that I've been doing is that women create and innovate out of need and necessity, but also by recognizing our inherent talents and combining that with what we love to do, which really sounds like what you are doing. So can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess women are just, I think, naturally so resourceful. They have to be.
Mhm.
And it starts out as being a mother. And then if you decide to go into business for yourself or whatever you end up doing, you take a lot of that resourcefulness with you. And um, so, yeah, I think that for me, I've always been really creative and always been resourceful. And that has really um, been great for me in business as well. Um, you know, everything you learn as a mom or as a young business executive stays with you, and you end up using it in your next iteration in life. And for me, of course, I had a time where I very seriously had to sit down and think about, what's going to make me happy right now? What is this next part of my life going to be? Sometimes we fall into that in different ways or we evolve into it. But yeah, I mean, I think when we think about what that thing is, we either have the skills, or for me, I'll take a million courses, I'll talk to a million people, I'll do whatever I have to kind of learn what I need to learn.
Yeah, I love where you're coming from, Deb, and very well said. And I hope that my listeners really get that, because there's so much opportunity. And I think you start with, believing in yourself, understanding the skills that you've honed all these years with the kids, with previous jobs, and moving forward with it. So I applaud you for the creativity that you show, and for the inspiration that you provide, and for the funding that you actually help people get, which really helps them. You're sort of like a mini launch pad for people from the funding perspective.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's good is I don't really sell any financial products, so I'm
Right.
agnostic and can really help people figure out what's best for them. And, depending on whether they want to have debt or equity or whatever they need.
Right. Understood.
Yeah.
All right, Deb. So since this is the Mom to More podcast, CEO of Board of Directors, I'd like to ask you, what is your more?
Um, my more is having a really exciting, career. I guess career just feels a little weird to say because that's
Mhm.
usually a younger person's word. But having something at this point in my life that um, is exciting to me.
Yeah.
It's more so than um, like kind of any recreational sport I could be playing or traveling, which I've done a lot of. I mean, at this point in my life, I want
Mhm.
to be stimulated, and the more is something that stimulates me and excites me every day.
I love that. And also, there is no time frame on reinvention. It could happen in your
For
40s, it can happen in
sure.
your 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
So what you just said about, I think that resonates with a lot of women, because you can do that, whatever it is for you, right? Whatever your next act is, there's no time frame on when you do it, but just what you said about being satisfied with yourself and who you are, and you are contributing to society and to the world. That's exciting. And if it
It
excites
is.
you, that's what matters. And if you're
Yeah.
making a difference in people's lives, that's what matters.
And I can tell by the kind of person you are that just the learning part of it is exciting.
Yes,
you know,
100%.
it's just really, I love taking courses. I love learning new things. It's very fulfilling.
Absolutely. And I think we are both forever learners.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
for sure.
I love doing that. I love doing that. So Deb, please tell my listeners where we can find you online, on social media, and also to everyone listening, all the information will be in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I'm at www.broadofdirectors.com. We're on Instagram at Broad of Directors. I am on LinkedIn at Deb Perkins. Also at Broad of Directors, but I'm not using that quite as much. And I don't use Facebook that much, but we're also Broad of Directors.
Gotcha. Well,
yeah,
this has been so enlightening and educational for me, because I'm not really in that space, but maybe I am, right? With the podcast.
You are. You just did. You may not call yourself.
I just may not realize
but
that.
You are.
Yeah. That's good to know. Thank you. I can add that.
Exactly.
But this has been so interesting, and thank you for sharing your heart and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And I'm just really grateful for the time we spent together. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sharon. I really appreciate it. It's great to be with you.
Before I sign off, a quick favor. I would love it if you would take a few moments to follow or subscribe to the pod. Following us means you'll never miss an episode, and it really does help the show to grow. Just go to the Mom to More show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen in, tap the plus sign in the upper right corner, or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to leave a 5-star rating and review and share an episode with another mom, I'd be so grateful and appreciate your support. Thanks for listening in, and see you next time.